Welcome back, artists. We are going to finish up our self-portraits today. We are going to paint them using a color family. So this would be an example of a yellow color family. It's actually the orange color family because you would have had the magenta paint chip and the yellow paint chip, and you would have made oranges. I chose to do this one with more yellows than oranges because I was thinking of that rainbow and I just wanted my color on the rainbow to be more of a yellow color. So I stuck with more yellows, but I did some lighter oranges like yellow orange instead of bright pumpkin orange and red orange. But you could use your yellow and magenta paint chip to make more of a dark orange color. Think of that spectrum on the rainbow where you would like your self-portrait to be. So this is a great example of it on more of the yellow side in the orange color family. Here is my other example that we'll paint today. So I'm going to show you how to use those paint chips. And this will be the violet color family that we're going to be using. So I would think about, do I want my violet, my purple, to be more of a red purple or more of a blue purple or more of just a indigo kind of a, blue color with a little bit of the magenta to make the purple. Because again, we're thinking about that spectrum on the rainbow, blue to purple. I think I'm just going to do just some beautiful purple. So after you have drawn your face, your self-portrait with pencil, you either outlined it with a Sharpie, a black crayon. I hope you didn't outline it with a water-based marker. If you did, when you paint it, that black line will bleed. So if you did, just trace over it with a black crayon or a Sharpie. Sharpies are not water-based, so they won't bleed. If you have pencil lines on your drawing, you may erase those. So you can take an eraser and erase those lines before you start to paint. So now we're ready to paint. We're going to use our paint chips. You're going to need your paintbrush and a container of water. I always tell my students the trick with paint chips is water. Water is your friend. We need to activate these colors, and we do that by using the water. So we dip our paintbrush in the water, and I like to make sure it gets good and wet. And I'm going to start by just releasing the paint from this paint chip by using the wet paintbrush and rubbing it back and forth on the paint chip to release the paint or the pigment. So you can see all the beautiful magenta in that brush. Now, if I wanted to, I could paint with just some straight magenta. And see, the paint is on the brush. But I want to make a purpley color. I do not want to rinse and waste that paint. So I'm not going to rinse my brush, but I need more water to activate some cyan. So I do what's called a quick dip. My paintbrush just dips in the water. Hardly any magenta came off my brush. And now I can rub that magenta onto my cyan chip, and look at that beautiful indigo color coming off. So I'm going to use that color down here on my neck, and I'm going slowly, going along the edge. Remember, artists, we want to use the tip of the paintbrush. We don't smash the paintbrush down like this. Don't push the paintbrush. Nobody likes to be pushed around, not even a paintbrush. Pull your paintbrush. So you're going to use all that color on your brush. I don't need more water yet because my color is still coming off. Now when I start to run out of color, I'll know it because see how now I'm starting to paint and get these white lines? So now what I'm going to do is dip again. I don't want to rinse, and I'm just going to pick up a little bit more pigment just to finish. But you see how the pigment I picked up is a little bluer because I didn't add that magenta. But that's okay because my neck is three-dimensional. So it might be darker on this side, lighter in the middle, and then darker again on this side. That helps to make it look three-dimensional. So I'm gonna let that dry. Now I think I'll do my hair. I like to work from one shape to another shape. While this color dries, I'm gonna go work at a shape away from it. So if I worked right next to it, my colors might blend together and they'd run, and that wouldn't be good. So I'm gonna come up here. And since I want the indigo and the purpley color, again, I'm gonna dip my paintbrush. I'm going to activate more paint on my paint chip here like this by rubbing. And then I'm going to, again, dip, don't rinse, just quick dip, get some magenta. And I'm gonna go for more of a little bit purpley color. I'm gonna swipe some of that blue. Now let's see if this color should be more magenta than this here. Should be a little bit more purple, and it is, look at that. So I'm getting different values of my purple, of that color family. That's what I want you guys to try to do. You can probably get at least 4 different values of the color. Remember, value is the lightness or darkness of the color. So here I have a more red value, here I have a more blue value, and here I just have nice purple value. They're technically not different colors, they're just different values or hues of that color. So if I want it to be a little bit more magenta, then I'll get a little bit more magenta paint off here. And maybe I'll do this one. That looks so similar, probably in your camera. From the camera, you can't really tell a difference, but there is a slight difference between these two. I can tell this one has a little bit more magenta in it, this value. Now I did paint right next to each other here, but I knew that my paint was dry enough that it wasn't going to bleed into the other one. Again, I'm pulling my paintbrush, and if you want to make strokes that kind of look like hair, you can do that. I like to make have the paint dry a little bit and then come back, and you can put some other darker, so see how I'm adding some darker values on there and just kind of streaking them on top. So that would make my hair look like it has texture, and it's, you know, not puffy, but it's not just flat on my head. All right, now I can come down. Maybe I'll paint the shirt. And I can do, again, I'm just going to activate that color, rub the paint chip 5 to 10 times. I can see the paint, the color on my paintbrush. And this is probably just going to be some straight blue, but I want to mix it with the magenta there. I look like I've been out in the snow. My lips are blue, they're cold. My eyes, I'm going to make blue because I have blue eyes. Although, if we're using a color family, especially like the orange color family, are we going to be able to make our eyes the color they probably are? No, and that is okay. I think with this one I chose to draw him with kind of a sad face because I felt like the color purple would represent that emotion. So that is why I chose the expression that I used here because of the color I was painting. I just thought it would complement that. I'm going to use the darker value here for my ears because ears are usually shaded from your hair, so they might be a darker value. Now when I do my face, because my nose is raised up and it's higher from my cheeks, that might be a lighter value. So I'm just going to take my paintbrush and put a little bit more water on it so that my paint is watered down. And that should make the color lighter. If you want your color lighter, add more water. If you want your color darker, get more pigment off the paint chip. And move that paint around. So I'm really moving that paint around with my paintbrush. And I'm going to pick some of it up here because I want that color on my nose a little bit lighter. a little bit darker around the edge of my nose. So I might add a little bit more color here to darken it. See how it's darker now around the bottom of my nose and my lips? So that is going to make it look like my nose is on a higher plane. And then there's going to be a little bit of a shadow underneath my eyebrow and my eye. So I can just put a little bit more paint there to darken it. And a little bit more water here. So I hope that helps you when you are painting your self-portraits. Now, if your color is too light, you're painting and your color is just too light like this, and you just can't seem to get any pigment. It's because you're not getting any pigment. You're mostly painting with water. Then you need to come back to the paint chip, rub more of the pigment off the paint chip. Rub, 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 and then that is what darkens the color. Okay, you're just not getting enough paint off the paint chip. Also, one more thing, as you're working with the paint chip, you'll notice, you can't really see it here, but you'll notice that the paint chip will start to turn white. Let's see if I can get this one to do it. It's starting to turn white here. There's no paint left there. So there's no point in rubbing and rubbing and rubbing. I have students a lot of times, they'll just rub, 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 and then they get these little balls because what they're doing is they're just killing the paper. They're just rubbing up the paper, and so you get these little balls here that it's just paper. Don't do that. You don't need to kill the paint chip. Just gently rub, all the pigment will come off. I'm almost done painting my portrait and my water is pretty clean. It's still really clean. A lot of times when students do this, all their paint ends up in their water because you can see all the beautiful paint on my paintbrush, and instead of putting it on their paper, they'll rinse it off in the cup and start rubbing again. Don't do that. Use the paint on your paintbrush. If you need to reactivate or get more water, just dip it. Don't make it swim around at the bottom, just a quick dip. You can see here I have magenta at the top and cyan there at the bottom. So I'm going to use the cyan up here for my eyebrow. And then I'm going to come down here, finish this collar off. And then I want you also to think about the background. Again, because we're doing a rainbow, we don't want to leave our background white. So I want to do something back there in the background. Because I have mostly purples and these are more red violets, I'm going to do more of a blue purple in the background. So I'm going to use pretty much the rest of the color on my paint chip. And now I just want to paint my background. So I'm going to do big strokes back here, and I'm actually going to just take some water from my water cup because I want my background to be actually very light in value, because I want my portrait to be the focal point and to stand out and create the contrast. So by having darker values in my portrait, my background can be lighter colors and it will pop out away from my background. All right, so you can see I am almost done with this. And again, I'm just really using the water from my water cup, and every once in a while grabbing a little bit more pigment. But again, that's just water that I'm blending in with the pigment that I put on there, so I can make a very nice light value in the background to finish my self-portrait that will then go on the purple side of the rainbow on display. All right, artists, have fun painting. And here's a tip. When you're all done, you're still gonna have pigment on these paint chips. You can keep these. Let them dry. Keep them and you could do another painting. So the next step, when you're all done and it's dry and you've painted everything, you're gonna take a pair of scissors and cut this off, and voila.